The rain came down hard that Tuesday night, the kind that soaks through your jacket in seconds and turns the streets into rivers. Lisa wiped down the last table at the diner, her feet aching after another double shift. 14 hours of serving coffee and burgers, smiling at customers who barely looked up from their phones, pretending she wasn't exhausted down to her bones. She counted her tips in the back room. $63. Not bad, but not great either. After splitting with the kitchen staff, she'd walk away with maybe 40. Combined with her wages, it might be enough to cover groceries this week. Maybe. Her rent was already 5 days late, and her landlord had stopped being understanding about 3 months ago. Lisa grabbed her worn coat from the hook and said goodbye to Tony, the night cook. He was a good guy, always saved her a burger when things were slow. She pushed through the back door into the alley, pulling her hood up against the rain. That's when she saw her. A girl, maybe 16 or 17, sitting on the ground next to the dumpster. She had her knees pulled up to her chest, arms wrapped around them, shivering. No coat, just a thin hoodie that was already soaked through. A backpack sat next to her in a puddle. Lisa should have kept walking. She had her own problems, her own bills, her own life that was barely holding together, but something made her stop. "Hey," Lisa called out. "You okay?" The girl's head snapped up. Even in the dim light from the street lamp, Lisa could see the fear in her eyes. She looked like a trapped animal ready to run. "I'm fine," the girl said, but her voice cracked. She wasn't fine. Anyone could see that. Lisa took a step closer, keeping her movement slow. "The diner's closed, but I can get you something to eat if you're hungry." I said I'm fine. The girl stood up quickly, grabbing her backpack. Water dripped from her hair, her clothes, everything. "Look, I'm not trying to bother you," Lisa said, "but it's pouring and you're soaked. There's a shelter about 6 blocks from here. I can point you in the right direction. I'm not going to a shelter." The words came out sharp, defensive. Lisa recognized that tone. She'd used it herself once, a long time ago. The tone of someone who'd learned that most help comes with strings attached. "Okay," Lisa said softly. "No shelter. But you can't stay here. The owner locks this alley up in about 20 minutes. The girl's face crumpled for just a second before she caught herself. She looked down at her soaked sneakers. "I don't know where else to go." Those words hung in the air between them. Lisa knew she should walk away. She knew getting involved was a bad idea. She barely had enough money to feed herself. Her apartment was tiny. She worked 70 hours a week just to stay afloat. But she also knew what it felt like to be that girl. Alone, scared, wet and cold with nowhere to go. "What's your name?" Lisa asked. The girl hesitated. "Beth. I'm Lisa. Look, Beth, I've got a couch. It's not much, but it's dry. You can crash there tonight, get warm, figure things out in the morning. No strings. I'm not calling anyone or asking questions. Just one night." Beth stared at her like she was trying to figure out the catch. "Why would you do that?" Lisa shrugged. "Because someone did it for me once. Come on." "My place is 3 blocks away." They walked in silence through the rain. Lisa lived in a rundown building on the edge of town, the kind where half the mailboxes were broken and the elevator never worked. She led Beth up 4 flights of stairs to her studio apartment. "It's not much," Lisa said, unlocking the door. That was an understatement. The whole place was maybe 300 square feet. A small kitchen area, a bathroom you could barely turn around in, and a main room with a couch, a bed, and a TV that only got basic channels. But it was clean and it was dry, and right now that was everything. Beth stood in the doorway, dripping on the mat. "Bathroom's there," Lisa pointed. "I'll grab you some dry clothes. They'll be big, but better than wet." She dug through her dresser and found an old t-shirt and sweatpants. When she knocked on the bathroom door, Beth opened it just enough to take the clothes. A few minutes later, she came out looking slightly less like a drowned cat. "Hungry?" Lisa asked. Beth nodded, not quite meeting her eyes. Lisa opened her nearly empty fridge. A carton of eggs, some cheese, half a loaf of bread. She made scrambled eggs and toast, splitting it between 2 plates. They ate at the small table in silence. Beth demolished her food in about 3 minutes. Lisa pretended not to notice, focusing on her own plate even though she wasn't really hungry. She was tired, so tired, but she poured them both some water and sat back down. "So," Lisa said carefully, "do you want to talk about it?" "Not really." "Fair enough." More silence. The rain hammered against the window. "I can't go home," Beth said suddenly. "I know that's what you're thinking. That I should just go home. But I can't. Lisa set down her glass. I wasn't thinking that. Everyone thinks that. They think if you're a kid and you run away, you're just being dramatic, that whatever's happening can't be that bad. Beth's hands were shaking. But it is that bad. My stepdad, She stopped, swallowing hard. You don't have to explain, Lisa said quietly. My mom doesn't believe me. I tried to tell her, but she thinks I'm lying. She thinks I'm trying to break them up or something. Beth's eyes were wet now, but she wiped them angrily. So I left. I took the bus as far as my money would go, and I've been trying to figure out what to do for 3 days. 3 days. This kid had been on the streets for 3 days. Where have you been sleeping? Lisa asked. Bus stations mostly. Coffee shops during the day. I had a little money, but it's gone now. Lisa rubbed her face. This was complicated. This was the kind of situation that could blow up in her face. If Beth's parents filed a missing persons report, if the police got involved, Lisa could get in serious trouble for harboring a runaway. But looking at Beth sitting there in borrowed clothes, barely holding it together, Lisa couldn't turn her away. Okay, Lisa said. Here's the deal. You can stay tonight. Tomorrow we figure out next steps. I'm not going to call anyone without talking to you first. But we need a plan. You can't just live on the streets. I know, Beth whispered. The couch pulls out into a bed. Bathroom's all yours. I have to work tomorrow, but I'll be back around 3. Thank you, Beth said, and she sounded like she might cry. I don't know why you're helping me, but thank you. Lisa shrugged, feeling awkward. Get some sleep. Things might look different in the morning. But as Lisa lay in her own bed that night, listening to Beth's quiet breathing from the couch, she knew things wouldn't look different in the morning. This girl needed help, real help. The kind Lisa wasn't sure she could provide. She stared at the ceiling, doing math in her head. If Beth stayed more than a night, Lisa would need more food. Maybe she could pick up extra shifts. But she was already working as much as the diner would give her. This was a bad idea. A terrible idea. But sometimes, Lisa thought, you don't choose the right thing because it's easy. You choose it because someone has to, and you're the one standing there when it matters. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, knowing tomorrow would bring more questions than answers. But for tonight, at least one kid was safe, dry, and warm. For tonight, that would have to be enough. Lisa woke up to the smell of coffee. For a confused moment, she thought she'd overslept and was late for her shift. Then she remembered. The girl. Beth. The couch. She sat up and found Beth standing awkwardly in the kitchen area, holding a mug. I hope it's okay, Beth said quickly. I made coffee. I found the filters and everything. Lisa blinked, still waking up. Yeah, it's fine, thanks. They sat at the small table again, both nursing their coffee. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains, making the shabby apartment look even more worn than it had the night before. Lisa could see Beth looking around, taking it all in. The peeling paint, the radiator that clanked, the crack in the ceiling that Lisa kept meaning to report. So, Lisa said, we should probably talk. Beth tensed up immediately. Nothing bad, Lisa added. I just mean we need to figure out a plan. You said you can't go home. I get that. But you also can't just disappear. You're what, 16? 17 in 2 months. Okay, so you're 16. That means legally you're still a minor. If your mom reported you missing, there are going to be cops looking for you. Beth's hands tightened around her mug. I know, but I'm not going back. I'll run again if I have to. Lisa heard the determination in her voice, but also the fear. She'd been exactly where Beth was sitting almost 15 years ago. Same desperation, same certainty that going back wasn't an option. Let me tell you something, Lisa said. When I was 17, I ran away too. Different reasons, but same situation. I thought I could just disappear and start over. You know what happened? Beth shook her head. I ended up sleeping in parks, stealing food from convenience stores, getting into situations that could have gotten me hurt or worse. I got lucky. Someone helped me eventually, but I wasted 2 years of my life just trying to survive. What are you saying? That I should go back? Beth's voice rose. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what I'm not saying that, Lisa interrupted gently. I'm saying running isn't enough. You need a real plan, something that actually protects you and gives you options. Beth looked down at her coffee. Like what? That was the question, wasn't it? Lisa didn't have a good answer. She wasn't a social worker or a lawyer. She was a waitress who could barely take care of herself. I don't know yet, Lisa admitted. but maybe we can figure it out together. First things first, though. Are you hungry? Beth nodded. Lisa made more eggs and toast, stretching her groceries as far as they'd go. As they ate, she studied Beth more carefully. The girl had dark circles under her eyes that spoke of many sleepless nights. Her hands had small scars on them, and she kept her left arm close to her body like it hurt. How long has this been going on? Lisa asked quietly. With your stepdad? Beth stared at her plate. About a year, since he moved in. It started small. Just comments, you know? Then it got worse. He'd find excuses to be alone with me, touch my shoulder, my hair. Mom was always at work or she'd go to bed early. He'd come to my room and... Her voice cracked. I told Mom 3 months ago. She didn't believe me. Said I was jealous because she was happy. Said I was making things up for attention. Lisa felt anger rising in her chest. She'd heard stories like this before. Seen them play out in a dozen different ways. Adults who should protect kids instead choosing to look away. Did he ever hurt you physically? Lisa asked. Beth pulled up her sleeve. There were bruises on her forearm, yellowing around the edges. Old enough to be a week or two. He grabbed me last time. When I said I was going to tell someone at school, that's when I left. Lisa took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. This was bigger than she'd thought. This wasn't just a kid running away from a bad situation. This was abuse. Real documented abuse. Beth, listen to me. What happened to you is serious. What your stepdad did, that's assault. You could press charges. Who's going to believe me? My own mom doesn't. A lot of people will believe you, but you need help. Professional help. There are people who deal with this stuff who know how to handle it. Like who? Social workers. They'll just put me in foster care or send me back home. Lisa couldn't promise that wouldn't happen. She didn't know enough about how the system worked, but she knew letting Beth keep running wasn't the answer either. Can I make a suggestion? Lisa said, just hear me out. There's a legal aid office downtown. They help people who can't afford lawyers. We could go talk to them, see what your options are. No commitment, just information. Beth looked suspicious. You're not going to call the police? Not unless you want me to. I'm just saying, let's get information. Knowledge is power, right? If we know what options exist, we can make better decisions. They sat in silence for a while. Lisa could see Beth turning it over in her mind, weighing the risks. What if they make me go back? Beth finally asked. Then we deal with that if it happens, but at least we'll know what we're dealing with. After breakfast, Lisa called the diner. She told Tony she had a family emergency and couldn't come in until the evening shift. It was a lie, but also kind of the truth. Beth was becoming family in a weird, unexpected way. They took the bus downtown. Lisa watched Beth stare out the window, looking at the city like she was seeing it for the first time. Maybe she was. When you're running, you don't really see anything. You're too busy looking over your shoulder. The legal aid office was in an old building between a laundromat and a tax preparation service. The waiting room had fluorescent lights that buzzed and plastic chairs that had seen better days. A tired-looking receptionist handed them forms to fill out. Lisa helped Beth with the paperwork. Under nature of problem, Beth wrote in small, careful letters, domestic abuse. Need help. They waited for almost an hour. Lisa's leg bounced with nerves. She kept thinking this was a mistake, that they should leave before anyone asked questions she couldn't answer. But Beth sat perfectly still, clutching her backpack like a lifeline. Finally, a woman in her 50s called Beth's name. She introduced herself as Patricia, an attorney who handled family law cases. She had kind eyes and a no-nonsense way of speaking that Lisa immediately appreciated. They sat in a small office crammed with filing cabinets and law books. Patricia listened as Beth told her story. Really listened. She took notes, asked gentle questions, and never once looked skeptical or judgmental. Okay, Patricia said when Beth finished. First thing you need to know is that you're incredibly brave for coming here. What you've described is sexual abuse and assault. That's a crime. Your stepfather could face serious charges. But my mom, Beth started. Your mother's disbelief doesn't make what happened to you less real or less serious. You have rights, Beth, and there are laws designed to protect young people in exactly your situation. Patricia explained the options. They could file a police report and start a criminal investigation. They could petition for emergency custody arrangements. In some cases, teenagers Beth's age could seek emancipation or placement with other relatives. There's no perfect solution, Patricia admitted. The system is complicated and sometimes slow. But doing nothing isn't safe either. If you go back home, you're at risk. If you stay on the streets, you're also at risk. What if I stay with Lisa? Beth asked suddenly. Could that work? Patricia looked at Lisa. Are you a relative? No, Lisa said. I just met her yesterday. I'm nobody. You're not nobody, Beth said quietly. Patricia considered this. It's complicated. Technically, housing a runaway minor without parental consent can be problematic. However, given the circumstances and the allegations of abuse, there might be options for temporary guardianship or emergency placement while we sort out the legal issues. What does that mean? Lisa asked. It means with the right paperwork and court approval, Beth could potentially stay with you on a temporary basis while we investigate the abuse claims and work toward a permanent solution, but you'd need to be vetted and there would be oversight. Lisa's mind raced. Taking in Beth for a night was one thing. Becoming her temporary guardian was something else entirely. It meant responsibility, commitment, getting tangled up in court systems and social workers and all the things Lisa had spent years avoiding. But when she looked at Beth's hopeful face, she couldn't say no. What do we need to do? Lisa asked. Patricia smiled. First, we file a formal complaint about the abuse. Then we petition for emergency custody arrangements. The judge will want to interview both of you. They'll do a home visit, background check on you, Lisa. The process takes a few weeks, maybe a month. Where does Beth stay in the meantime? Lisa asked. Ideally, she'd stay in a safe place with someone trustworthy. Patricia looked at Lisa meaningfully. My couch, Lisa said. She can stay on my couch. The gratitude in Beth's eyes made Lisa's chest tight. They spent the next 2 hours filling out forms and giving statements. By the time they left the office, it was past noon and Lisa's head was spinning with information. Outside, Beth turned to her. Thank you. For coming with me. For believing me. Of course I believe you, Lisa said. Now come on. I need to get to work, and you need to figure out what you're going to do while I'm gone. On the bus ride home, Lisa tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. She tried not to calculate how much extra money she'd need for another person. She tried not to worry about the home visit or the background check or any of it. Instead, she focused on what Patricia had said. Knowledge is power. Now they had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And sometimes something is all you need to hold on to. 3 weeks had passed since that rainy night. 3 weeks of Lisa and Beth learning to live in 300 square feet together. 3 weeks of carefully building something that looked almost like trust. Beth had settled into a routine. She kept the apartment clean, did the dishes, learned to make the cheap groceries stretch further than Lisa thought possible. The girl was resourceful in ways that made Lisa's heart hurt. Nobody should have to learn that kind of survival so young. Lisa had picked up extra shifts at the diner. Tony noticed she looked more tired than usual, but he didn't ask questions. That was one thing Lisa appreciated about him. He minded his own business. Beth spent her days reading books from the library and filling out paperwork for Patricia. The legal process moved slower than either of them wanted. There were forms, interviews, evaluations. Beth had to tell her story over and over to different people. Each time, Lisa could see it taking something out of her. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, everything changed. Lisa was at work, in the middle of the lunch rush, when her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her step into the back room. Is this Lisa Chen? A woman's voice asked. Yeah, who's this? My name is Detective Rodriguez. I'm with the Family Crimes Unit. I need to talk to you about Beth Winters. Lisa's stomach dropped. Is she okay? She's fine, but we have a situation. Beth's mother filed a missing persons report 3 weeks ago. We've been investigating and we got a tip that Beth might be staying with you. This was it, the moment Lisa had been dreading. She'd known it could happen, but hearing it made it real. Beth is safe, Lisa said carefully. We've been working with legal aid. There's a lawyer, Patricia Chen. She's handling the case. I'm aware. I've spoken with Ms. Chen, but I still need to talk to Beth and I need to talk to you. Can you come down to the station? Beth is here with a social worker. Wait, what? How did Beth get there? She was picked up this morning. The social worker went to your apartment address on file. Beth cooperated and came voluntarily. Lisa felt panic rising. Is she under arrest? No, nothing like that. We just need to sort this out. How soon can you get here? 20 minutes later. Lisa was rushing through the doors of the police station, still wearing her diner uniform and smelling like French fries. A woman at the front desk directed her to a room on the second floor. Beth was sitting in a chair looking small and scared. Next to her was a woman in a blazer who introduced herself as Denise, a social worker. Detective Rodriguez sat across from them, and Patricia was there too, laptop open, taking notes. "Lisa," Beth said, relief flooding her face. "I'm here," Lisa said, sitting down next to her. "It's okay." Detective Rodriguez was in her 40s with graying hair and the kind of tired eyes that said she'd seen too much. She looked at Lisa with an expression that was hard to read. "Ms. Chen, I need to ask you some questions. When did Beth start staying with you?" Lisa told the truth, all of it. Finding Beth in the rain, bringing her home, going to legal aid, the temporary arrangement while they worked through the legal system. She watched the detective's face, trying to gauge her reaction. "Were you aware that harboring a runaway minor is illegal?" Rodriguez asked. "I'm aware it's complicated," Lisa said, "but I also know that sending a kid back to an abusive home is wrong. So I made a choice that could result in charges against you." Patricia jumped in. "Detective, my client had legitimate concerns for Beth's safety. She acted in good faith and immediately sought legal counsel. Given the circumstances and the abuse allegations, I don't think charging Ms. Chen serves anyone's interests." Rodriguez sighed. "I've read Beth's statement. I've seen the medical examination results. I've also spoken to Beth's mother." Everyone in the room went still. "And?" Patricia prompted. "Mrs. Winters denies everything, says Beth is lying, that she's always been a difficult child. She wants her daughter back immediately." Beth made a small sound, almost like a whimper. Lisa reached over and took her hand. "But," Rodriguez continued, "I've also interviewed the stepfather. His story doesn't match Mrs. Winters' timeline. And when I mentioned we'd be examining his phone and computer, he suddenly remembered he had a business trip he needed to take. Left town yesterday." Patricia leaned forward. "So you believe Beth?" "What I believe doesn't matter as much as what I can prove. But yes, based on the evidence and Beth's consistent testimony across multiple interviews, I believe her. The problem is, legally, Mrs. Winters still has parental rights. Unless we can prove abuse to a judge's satisfaction, she can demand her daughter back." "No," Beth said, her voice stronger than Lisa had heard it. "I won't go. I'll run again." "Beth, that's not going to help," Rodriguez said, but not unkindly. "Running just makes things harder." "Then what am I supposed to do? Just go back and hope he doesn't come back? Hope my mom suddenly believes me?" The room fell silent. Lisa could feel Beth shaking next to her. "There's another option," Denise, the social worker, spoke up. "Given the active investigation and the allegations of abuse, we could place Beth in emergency foster care while the case proceeds. It's temporary, but it would keep her out of her mother's home." "Foster care?" Beth's voice went small again. "With strangers? It's not ideal," Denise admitted. "But it's safe. And it's legal. The alternative is going back home, and I don't recommend that given the circumstances." Lisa felt Beth's hand tighten around hers. She thought about the small apartment, the couch that Beth had been sleeping on, the routine they'd built. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was safe. It was becoming home. "What about me?" Lisa heard herself say. "Can Beth stay with me?" "Officially?" Everyone looked at her. "We discussed emergency guardianship," Patricia said. "But the process takes time and the court requirements." "I'll meet whatever requirements you need," Lisa interrupted. "I'll do background checks, home visits, whatever. But don't put her with strangers. She's been through enough." Rodriguez studied Lisa. "You understand what you're signing up for? This isn't temporary. If you become Beth's guardian, even temporarily, you're responsible for her. Financially, legally, all of it. I understand. You work at a diner. You live in a studio apartment. You're barely making it yourself." It wasn't said meanly, just factually. "I know what I am," Lisa said quietly. "I know what I have and what I don't have. But I also know what it's like to be scared and alone with nowhere to go. Beth needs someone who believes her, who won't give up on her. I can be that person." Denise looked at Patricia. "Is this possible? Given the timeline?" Patricia typed something on her laptop. "There's a provision for emergency kinship placement. It's usually for relatives, but in exceptional circumstances, with court approval, it can be extended to non-family members who've established a caregiving relationship. They've known each other 3 weeks," Rodriguez pointed out. 3 weeks where Ms. Chen has provided stable housing, helped Beth access legal services, and acted as a consistent support. That's more than some relatives do. Patricia looked at Lisa. But you need to understand this will be scrutinized. Every aspect of your life will be examined. Your finances, your work history, your apartment, everything. Let them look, Lisa said. Rodriguez stood up. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to speak to my supervisor and the district attorney about the abuse allegations. We're going to continue investigating the stepfather. In the meantime, I'm comfortable with Beth staying in Ms. Chen's care temporarily, provided we can get emergency court approval. How long will that take? Beth asked. If we file today, we might get a hearing by Monday. Until then, you stay with Lisa. But, she looked at Beth seriously, you don't leave town. You check in with Denise every other day. And if anything changes, you tell someone immediately. Understood? Beth nodded. Ms. Chen, Rodriguez added, the same goes for you. Any problems, any concerns, you contact us immediately. I will. 2 hours later, Lisa and Beth walked out of the police station into the afternoon sun. Neither of them spoke for a while. They just walked, processing everything that had happened. Finally, Beth said, You didn't have to do that. Tell them I could stay with you. Yeah, I did. Why? You don't owe me anything. Lisa stopped walking and turned to face Beth. You want to know why? Because 15 years ago I was you. I was scared and alone, and I made stupid decisions because I didn't have any good options. Someone helped me eventually, but it took years before I found them. You don't have to waste years, Beth. You don't have to do this alone. Beth's eyes filled with tears. What if they say no? What if the judge says I can't stay with you? Then we deal with that. But right now we have each other and we have a plan. That's more than we had 3 weeks ago. They walked back to the apartment in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. It felt less like two people stuck together by circumstance and more like two people choosing to stick together. That night, Lisa looked at her bank account on her phone. After paying bills, she had $87 to last until next payday. The court fees and legal aid donations had wiped out what little savings she'd had. She'd need to pick up more shifts, find a way to make more money. But when she looked at the couch where Beth was sleeping, finally looking peaceful for the first time in weeks, Lisa knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing costs everything. But sometimes everything you have is exactly enough. The court hearing was set for Monday morning at 9. Lisa had never been inside a courtroom before, except once when she'd gotten a speeding ticket years ago. That had been different. Quick, impersonal. This felt like everything was on the line. She'd asked for the day off work, but Tony told her the owner was getting frustrated with her schedule changes. Too many missed shifts, too many special requests. Lisa knew what that meant. Her job was hanging by a thread. But right now, Beth mattered more. Patricia met them outside the courthouse. She looked professional in a dark suit, carrying a briefcase full of documents. Lisa felt underdressed in her only pair of dress pants and a borrowed blazer that was too big. Okay, Patricia said, walking them through what would happen. The judge will hear testimony from both sides. Beth's mother has a lawyer. They're going to argue that Beth should be returned to her custody. We're arguing for emergency guardianship placement with you, Lisa, while the abuse investigation continues. What are our chances? Lisa asked. Patricia hesitated. Honestly, it could go either way. Judges usually prefer to keep kids with biological parents when possible, but the abuse allegations work in our favor. A lot depends on how the judge reads the situation. Beth was quiet, her face pale. She'd barely slept the night before. Lisa had heard her tossing and turning on the couch. Inside the courtroom, Lisa saw Beth's mother for the first time. Mrs. Winters was a thin woman in her 40s, wearing too much makeup that didn't quite hide the exhaustion in her face. She sat with her lawyer, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit. When she saw Beth, something flickered across her face. Anger, hurt? It was hard to tell. Beth wouldn't look at her. The judge was a black woman in her 60s with glasses and a stern expression. She called the case and everyone stood. Mrs. Winters' lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a troubled teenager who'd run away from a loving home. He talked about how Mrs. Winters was a devoted mother who'd been frantic with worry. He mentioned that Beth had a history of behavioral issues at school, making it sound like running away was just another problem in a long list. Lisa felt anger building in her chest, but Patricia had warned her to stay calm, stay quiet. Then Mrs. Winters testified. She talked about how much she loved her daughter, how she'd been searching for her for weeks. She denied the abuse allegations completely. "My daughter has always had a vivid imagination," Mrs. Winters said, her voice breaking. "She's been jealous ever since I started dating Kevin. She never wanted me to be happy with anyone else." "And where is Kevin now?" the judge asked. Mrs. Winters hesitated. "He's away on business." During a custody hearing about serious abuse allegations, the judge's tone was sharp. He didn't think his presence would be helpful, given the circumstances. The judge made a note of that. Then it was Patricia's turn. She called Detective Rodriguez to testify. The detective laid out the investigation findings. The medical examination that showed old bruises consistent with Beth's timeline, the inconsistencies in the stepfather's story, his sudden departure from town. "In my professional opinion," Rodriguez said, "Beth Winters is at risk in her mother's home. The evidence suggests a pattern of abuse and a parent who is unwilling or unable to protect her child." Next, Patricia called Lisa to the stand. Lisa's hands were shaking as she was sworn in. "Ms. Chen, how did you meet Beth?" Patricia asked. Lisa told the story. The rain, the alley, bringing Beth home. She tried to stay factual, but she couldn't help the emotion that crept into her voice when she talked about seeing Beth sitting there, soaked and scared. "And why did you decide to help her?" Patricia asked. "Because someone needed to. Because I saw myself in her. Because it was the right thing to do." "You're not wealthy, are you, Miss Chen?" "No. You work as a waitress. You live in a small apartment. Why take on the responsibility of caring for another person?" Lisa looked at Beth, who was watching her with wide eyes. "Because having money isn't the same as having heart," Lisa said. "I might not have much, but what I have I can share." Beth needed someone to believe her, to be in her corner. That doesn't cost anything except caring enough to show up. Mrs. Winters' lawyer cross-examined her next. He tried to make her sound irresponsible. Asked about her finances, her single status, her small apartment. "Isn't it true that you can barely support yourself, Miss Chen?" "I manage just fine. But you're not exactly stable, are you? You work long hours at a diner. You've had difficulty paying rent in the past. What makes you think you can provide for a teenage girl?" "Because I will," Lisa said simply. "I'll work extra shifts. I'll figure it out. That's what you do for people you care about. You've known this girl for less than a month. You call that caring? I call that being human." The lawyer looked frustrated, like he'd expected her to be easier to rattle. Finally, the judge asked to speak to Beth privately in her chambers. Beth looked terrified, but Patricia whispered something to her and she nodded. They were gone for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of Lisa sitting on a hard wooden bench, leg bouncing, trying not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Mrs. Winters sat on the other side of the courtroom, crying quietly into a tissue. When Beth came back out, her face was red and blotchy, but she walked straight to Lisa and sat down next to her. "What happened?" Lisa whispered. "She asked me everything. About what happened at home, about why I ran, about you." I told her the truth. A few minutes later, everyone was called back into the courtroom. The judge looked at her notes, then at Beth, then at both lawyers. "This is a difficult case," she said. "On one hand, we have a mother who claims she loves her daughter and wants her home. On the other, we have serious allegations of abuse and a teenager who is clearly terrified of returning to that home." Lisa held her breath. "I've reviewed the evidence. I've read Detective Rodriguez's report. I've spoken with Beth privately, and I've watched how she responds to both her mother and to Ms. Chen." The judge paused. "Mrs. Winters, I'm troubled by several things. Your partner, who is the subject of these abuse allegations, has left town rather than face questions. The medical evidence, while not conclusive, is consistent with Beth's account. And most concerning, your daughter is genuinely afraid of going home. A child doesn't develop that level of fear without reason." Mrs. Winters was crying harder now. "At the same time, Ms. Chen, you're not a perfect solution either. You're struggling financially. You have no experience with teenagers. Your apartment is barely adequate." Lisa's heart sank. "However," the judge continued, "you're here. You showed up. You helped this girl when she had no one else. And it's clear that Beth trusts you in a way she doesn't trust her own mother right now. That trust matters." The judge looked at her paperwork one more time. "I'm granting temporary emergency guardianship to Lisa Chen, pending ongoing investigation of the abuse allegations. This is not permanent. This is not a final decision. But for the next 3 months, Beth will remain in Ms. Chen's care. During that time, I expect the following: Ms. Chen will work with Child Protective Services. Beth will attend counseling. There will be monthly home visits. Beth will return to school. And Mrs. Winters, you will cooperate fully with the investigation into your partner's conduct. She looked at Beth. Young lady, this is not a vacation. You will follow the rules Ms. Chen sets. You will take your education seriously. And you will check in regularly with your caseworker. Understood? Yes, Your Honor, Beth said, her voice small but steady. Mrs. Winters, you will have supervised visitation rights once per month if Beth agrees. If the investigation clears your partner, we'll revisit custody. If it doesn't, we'll discuss more permanent arrangements. Mrs. Winters stood up. This is wrong. She's my daughter. She's a child who needs to feel safe, the judge said firmly. And right now, she doesn't feel safe with you. If you want your daughter back, you need to prove she can be safe in your home. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Lisa felt like she couldn't breathe. Beth turned to her, tears streaming down her face. We did it, Beth whispered. We actually did it. Patricia was grinning. Congratulations. You're officially a guardian. Outside the courthouse, reality started to set in. 3 months. Lisa had 3 months to figure out how to care for a teenager. 3 months to keep her job, pay her bills, and somehow make enough money to support 2 people instead of 1. She should have felt terrified. Instead, looking at Beth's relieved face, she felt something else. Purpose. For the first time in years, she felt like her life meant something. So what happens now? Beth asked. Now we go home, Lisa said. We figure out how to get you enrolled in school. We make a budget. We deal with reality. Together? Yeah, Lisa said. Together. As they walked to the bus stop, Lisa's phone rang. It was Tony from the diner. Hey, I heard you had your court thing today. How'd it go? We won. Temporary guardianship. That's great. Listen, about your shifts. I talked to the owner. He's willing to give you more hours if you want them. Evening shifts, some weekends. I told him you're reliable, that you're going through something important. Lisa felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Tony, really. Yeah, well, come in tomorrow when you can. We'll work it out. That night, Lisa sat down with Beth in a notebook. They made lists, budget, school supplies, groceries, counseling appointments. It was overwhelming looking at it all written out. But they had 3 months. 3 months to prove they could make this work. 3 months to build something that looked like a family. It wasn't much time. But it was more than they'd had yesterday. And sometimes that's exactly enough to start building something real. 2 years later, Lisa stood in the back of the community college auditorium, wearing the same diner uniform she'd worn to court that day. She'd come straight from her shift, but she wouldn't have missed this for anything. The graduating class filed onto the stage, and Lisa spotted Beth immediately. She'd grown taller, her hair longer than it used to be. But more than that, she looked different, confident, strong, like someone who'd learned she could survive hard things and come out the other side. Lisa thought back to that first night. The rain, the scared girl by the dumpster. If someone had told her then how much would change, she wouldn't have believed them. Those first 3 months after the court hearing had been the hardest of Lisa's life. Getting Beth enrolled in school took weeks of paperwork and meetings. The alternative program for kids who'd fallen behind was across town, which meant bus fare they could barely afford. Lisa worked 60-hour weeks, picking up every shift Tony could give her, and taking a second job cleaning offices at night. Money was tight. More than tight. Some weeks Lisa ate nothing but ramen and peanut butter so Beth could have proper meals. They shared the one coat between them, timing who needed to be outside when. The apartment's heat was unreliable, so they slept with every blanket they owned, but they made it work. Beth threw herself into school like her life depended on it. Because in a way it did. She knew she was on borrowed time, that if she messed up, if Lisa couldn't handle it, everything could fall apart. She studied at the library until it closed, did homework at the diner while Lisa worked, absorbed knowledge like someone who'd been starved for it. The counseling sessions were hard. Beth had to talk about things she wanted to forget. Some nights she'd have nightmares and wake up crying. Lisa learned to recognize the signs, learned when to talk and when to just sit quietly nearby until Beth felt safe again. The home visits from Child Protective Services were stressful. A woman named Linda came once a month inspecting the apartment, asking questions, making notes. She was kind but thorough. Lisa could never tell if they were passing or failing. The supervised visits with Beth's mother were worse. They happened at a social services office with Linda present. Mrs. Winters would cry and beg Beth to forgive her, to come home. But she never said the words Beth needed to hear. She never said, "I believe you." She never said, "I'm sorry I didn't protect you." After 6 months, the visits stopped. Mrs. Winters missed 3 appointments in a row. When Patricia followed up, they learned she'd moved out of state with her boyfriend. The boyfriend, who'd been charged with assault after the investigation, found evidence on his computer. Evidence that made Lisa sick to think about. Mrs. Winters had chosen him over her daughter. The judge made Lisa's guardianship permanent shortly after that. On that day, sitting in the same courtroom, the judge looked at Beth and said, "I'm sorry your mother couldn't be who you needed her to be. But it looks like you found family anyway." Lisa remembered Beth turning to her with tears in her eyes, whispering, "Is this real? Are you really mine now?" "Yeah," Lisa had said. "I'm really yours. And you're really mine." Things got a little easier after that. Patricia helped them apply for guardianship benefits, which helped with expenses. Tony gave Lisa a raise and promoted her to shift manager. The apartment was still small, but they made it feel like home. Beth put up posters on her side of the room. They got a used bookshelf from the thrift store. Lisa found a small TV that actually got good channels. Beth kept working at it. School, counseling, building a life. She made friends cautiously at first, learning to trust again. She joined the school's book club, discovered she loved poetry, started writing her own. When college applications came around, Lisa worried they couldn't afford it. But Beth's grades were excellent. Her essay about survival and second chances was powerful, and the financial aid came through. Scholarship money, grants, work-study programs. Between that and Lisa's savings, they made it work. Now, standing in the auditorium, Lisa watched Beth accept her associate degree. It was just the first step. Beth planned to transfer to a 4-year school next fall, study social work. She wanted to help other kids like her. When Beth's name was called, Lisa cheered louder than anyone. Tony was next to her, having closed the diner early to come. Patricia was there too, smiling proudly. Even Detective Rodriguez had shown up, standing in the back in casual clothes. After the ceremony, Beth found Lisa in the crowd. She was holding her diploma like it was made of gold. "We did it," Beth said, pulling Lisa into a hug. "You did it," Lisa corrected. "I just made sure you had somewhere safe to do it from." "That's not true. You did everything." Beth pulled back, her eyes serious. "Do you know what my counselor told me last week? She said most people who go through what I went through, they don't make it this far. They drop out, get into bad situations, repeat the cycle. But I didn't because I had you." Lisa felt tears building. "You made it because you're strong. Because you didn't give up." "I wanted to give up," Beth admitted. "That first year there were days I wanted to run again. Days I thought it would be easier to just disappear. But I couldn't do that to you. You believed in me when nobody else did. You chose me when you didn't have to." They stood there in the crowded auditorium, 2 people who'd saved each other without really meaning to. Later, they all went to the diner for a celebration dinner. Tony made Beth her favorite burger and brought out a small cake he'd hidden in the back. It said, "Congrats, graduate," in slightly crooked letters. "Sorry, it's not fancy," Tony said. "But it's chocolate." "It's perfect," Beth said. They ate and talked and laughed. Patricia told embarrassing stories from various court cases. Rodriguez talked about finally retiring next year. Tony complained about the new health inspector. Normal stuff, family stuff. As the evening wound down and people started leaving, Beth and Lisa walked home together. The same streets they'd walked 2 years ago, but everything felt different now. "Can I tell you something?" Beth asked. "Always. I'm writing my speech for the transfer student orientation. They asked me to talk about overcoming obstacles. And I keep thinking about that first night when you found me in the rain. Yeah, I was so scared. I thought my life was over. I thought I'd end up dead or worse. But then you stopped. You could have kept walking. Most people would have. But you didn't," Lisa shrugged. "I saw someone who needed help. It was more than that, though. You saw someone worth helping. Do you know how rare that is? To look at a scared, dirty kid with nothing to offer you and decide they're worth your time, your money, your life." "Beth, no, let me finish. I want to say this." Beth stopped walking and turned to face her. "You taught me what family really means. Not blood, not obligation, but choice. You chose me every single day. Even when it was hard, even when it cost you everything. You worked yourself to exhaustion. You gave up things you needed. You fought for me, of course I did. But not everyone would. My own mother didn't, but you did. And because you did, I learned something important. I learned that I was worth fighting for, that I deserved to be safe, that I could have dreams and work toward them and maybe achieve them. Beth wiped her eyes. You gave me my life back. How do I even begin to thank you for that? Lisa pulled her into another hug. You don't need to thank me. Watching you succeed, seeing you happy and safe, that's all the thanks I need. You did the hard part, Beth. You did the work. You healed, you grew. You became this amazing person. We did it together. Yeah, Lisa agreed. We did. They walked the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. The apartment was still small, still in the same rundown building. But when they walked through the door, it felt different than it had 2 years ago. It felt like what it was. Home. Beth went to her side of the room and pulled out a wrapped box. I got you something. For being there through all of this. You didn't have to do that, I wanted to. Lisa unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a framed photo from the graduation, showing Beth on stage accepting her diploma. But there was also a second frame with a letter written in Beth's neat handwriting. It read, To Lisa, you took in a scared kid with nothing to offer and gave her everything that mattered. You showed me that family isn't about DNA, it's about who shows up, who stays, who believes in you even when you don't believe in yourself. Thank you for being my safe place. Thank you for being my home. Thank you for being my family. I love you, Beth. Lisa couldn't speak. She just held the frame and cried. I mean it, Beth said softly, every word. That night, lying in bed, Lisa thought about how much had changed since that rainy Tuesday. She'd been so sure her life was going nowhere, just working and surviving and waiting for nothing in particular. But then she'd found Beth, or Beth had found her. And suddenly her life had purpose, meaning, love. She wasn't rich. The apartment was still small. Her job was still hard. But none of that mattered because she had something worth more than money or comfort. She had family, real family, the kind you choose and fight for and build from scratch in the middle of chaos. People always said blood was thicker than water. But Lisa knew better now. Love was thicker than anything. And the love you chose, the love you built with someone through shared struggle and sacrifice, that was the strongest kind of all. 2 years ago, Lisa had been a struggling waitress just trying to survive. Now she was something more. A guardian, a mentor, a mom, even though Beth didn't call her that, someone who mattered in another person's life. She'd saved Beth that night in the rain, but the truth was Beth had saved her too. Saved her from a life that was just existing instead of living. Saved her from loneliness. Saved her from thinking she didn't matter. They'd saved each other. And sometimes, Lisa thought as she drifted off to sleep, that's how the best families are born. Not from blood or obligation, but from two people who needed each other finding each other at exactly the right moment. Two people choosing to stay. Two people building something real out of nothing but hope and stubborn love. Two people becoming family. One difficult day at a time.